Hello, my friends. In this one, I'm just going to get right to the point because it might be rather long, but it's very important to see what is happening in the world, and not just in America, but everywhere in the world. Is this same movement is coming up? I'm going to show you why I think God has led me to see this particular movement and what is going to eventually happen with it. I believe He has revealed to me who the beast will sit on the throne for. Now, all throughout any kind of a democracy, even in kings and queens, and there's always different levels of authority and different parties of people that gather together, and they have their debates, and that's pretty much how government works, other than under a dictatorship. You have the parliament, you have Congress, so on and so forth. But within those specific law institutions or financial institutions, you have splits and divisions amongst them. For instance, in America, we have a Democrat and a Republican. But then, whenever you go even further than that, you can split Democrats now into two different parties. You can split Republicans now into two different parties. And even though neither one of these has a name yet, they're still just called broadly Democrats if you're left-leaning, Republicans if you're right-leaning, or independent if you don't care about either of them. But within the Republican Party, for instance, you have those who are with Donald Trump and those who are against Donald Trump. You have the rhinos, as they call them in America, the Republicans in name only, and then you have the true patriot Republicans, so they say. And both of these parties exist within the same party currently. Within the Democrats, you have the same exact thing happening. You have the traditional Union Democrats, which agree mostly with everything that the Republicans teach today. And then you have the radical left-leaning anarchists and communists and socialists, which are in that same party. And right now, the two exist with each other. For this election, for instance, everybody who is a far left rioter and whatever you want to call them, they're out there on the streets every day talking about how terrible their country is. They're going to vote right alongside of those Democrats who just plain and simply haven't allowed themselves to see what is happening in the country. They have not allowed themselves to see the change and understand that they're no longer even Democrats. They are something totally different because the party has changed that much. But until this division comes, it's not going to register to anybody in large numbers. But when the division comes, that is when people will begin to take notice. So what I start with is the Nazi rise to power. And you can go back to Germany, you look at the circumstances which brought about this National Socialist Party. And it was a right-wing party that came and emerged right at the onset of the Great Depression, right after World War I. In other words, there's lots of problems within Germany. There's financial problems, there's working problems, there's every kind of problem you could think of because of leadership in Germany from the war had failed. Look at America. You got the same kind of situation. There is a large percentage of people that, even though America has turned it around in these last 4 years, they can't look at the country like that because they were so devastated from the stock market crash in the late 2000s. And there's a lot of people that have been unable to get jobs and homeless and everything else. All the problems that you see coming out today in America have come primarily because of the economic situation and the leadership of the country unable to bring those people to see that they do have a choice or they do have options. They just instead sit around and watch the news and read the medias and all that kind of things and build hatred for other people simply because somebody has and they do not have. It's the same exact kind of thing. So the Nazis rose to power in situations of great turmoil within the world. Likewise, we've seen this radical, as they call them. Well, it depends on who you are, but generally radical just means that division within the party. So in other words, if you are a Democrat and you lean on the left, you have the traditional, more conservative Democrats that are half of a party, And then you have the radical Democrats, as they call them. This is just because the official split of the party has not happened yet. And it's going to happen exactly the way that the National Socialists came into power. That's going to come, or that came off of a split. So will that radical wing of the Democratic Party come off of a split. And then guess what? You're going to have that radical wing in the Democrat Party, which is now called the far left. Then you're going to have a radical wing on the Republican Party, which is now called the far right. You're going to see the Democrats and the Republican parties split right down the middle. And it's going to form 4 parties in America rather than just the 2. And this isn't something new in America. It's happened since our inception. We've had parties come and parties go. Parties divide, parties split off. We've had them come and go. For instance, like the Whigs is an example. That was once a party. So it's nothing that is against the law or the Constitution or something like that. It's just over time the ideals of people change. And that's why you're going to have this split. So what we're looking at with the Nazis is they came in very small. Their numbers very small. And they spoke a message to people that essentially they were being screwed over in Germany. That everybody's out of work, nobody has any money, there's all this economic crisis, we can't rebound from the war. They're unable to take those people's thoughts and make them positive. They instead turn them negative so that they can all form a different party. And look what the media does. It talks about everything as far as fear and misery goes. They constantly harp on everybody that everybody's dying, there's no way out of this. They're not giving anybody any hope. And if you sit around and listen to the media all day long, you will fall into depression because they give you no hope of anything good. So whenever you don't have any hope, you look for the only thing you can do, and that is unite with other people who are in the same situation as you are and try to come into power yourself so you can fix it. Nazis did the same exact thing in Germany. If you look at what the National Socialist Party actually was, it comes from a split and a division, and then by a little number of people, they gather more as they come because they still preach the gospel of fear and misery and the reward of if we just got rid of certain peoples, then we can have it good because we are better than they. Well, look at what's happening in America. White people are the enemy in America. Anybody of color will also see this because if they understand and believe the truth, they will see that the white people in America are targeted specifically just because we're white. So if you look at the enemy in Germany, it was the Jews, who also were white, as a matter of fact. But they were Jews. If you look now at the enemy, it is white people, and it's law enforcement, police officers. Why is it police officers now with the white people? Because they cannot take over unless there is lawlessness on the streets. The police officers now already have their hands tied. They're not stopping anybody in, say, Portland, or there's a judge that just banned use of tear gas and other means of dispersing a crowd in, I believe it was Detroit, for 2 weeks. And now the police officers can't even disperse a crowd there for 2 weeks because the judge ordered them not to. There's just all of these things that we see in turmoil that happens. And out of misery, out of fear, the virus kind of pushed us over the top. Out of these things comes that great division within the party. And it's going to happen, and I believe God has given me a foresight of how it's going to happen. It's going to happen just like the Nazis came into power. Only it's going to be a little bit different this time in America, and I'll explain why. So you have something now known as the Squad. And if anybody lives in America, you know who the Squad is. Famously, there are these 4 Democratic House of Representatives leaders in their states. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, and Rashida Tlaib. And all of these cities that they are running, or over, or have a part of, are all cities that have turned lawless. Because if the city was not lawless, they would never have voted them in the first place. But these are states that have become lawless in certain areas and regions of the state. and thus they come into power. And just God gives me these little things to look at and just kind of see something and then just vision why he's showing me this. When I look at this, I see the four horsemen of the apocalypse, for instance. You have the pale horse standing right in the middle. You have the white horse with a white hat on beside her. You have the red horse right beside her. And you have the black horse down on the other end. It's just, these things you cannot make up. God puts them out there and makes them reveal themselves for those who have the eyes to see it. And I don't think that this really means that these four individuals are the horsemen. But I think that these four individuals are what carry in the apocalypse by their ideals. So because of this squad, you have the four horsemen of the apocalypse that's just waiting to be born, because it's going to come from their actions amongst this new party that's going to form from the Democrats. And what is this party going to be called? Antifa, maybe? Because it is a well-known, world-renowned organization, the Antifa. They are a political protest movement comprising autonomous groups affiliated by their militant opposition to fascism and other forms of extreme right-wing ideology. And every bit of it is a lie. By their own definition, it's a lie, because everything that they do is fascist. If you don't agree with them, they kick you. If you come against them, they will try to destroy you from speaking. They do everything that is fascist, and everybody actually realizes this. They use violence and they use force, and they admit to it, and they love that they do it, because for them, they're fighting against fascists in their own mind. They can't see that they themselves are the fascists. So what about this Antifa party that becomes half of the Democratic wing? It's not their ideology. They think that fascism is on the right. Well, fascism is all the way on the left. The same thing. It's kind of like the difference between socialism and communism. The farther you go right or the farther you go left, the more everything kind of meets right back in the middle. And so they try to tell people that they're fighting fascism and extreme right-wing groups because they can't see, they don't have the ability to look into a mirror because they have no love. They don't see that they are that group that they're fighting against. And God in the end times, he says that everything will be essentially reversed. That which is good will be evil. That which was evil will be good. And they use the word as power so that they can deceive people. So they call people fascists on the right side who are actually patriots for their country, because it deceives some people into believing that they are fascists. So they gain power by deception. Just like the Antichrist comes into power, doesn't he? He comes into power by deceit, because people give their power away to him, and he deceives them into giving them their power. So could Antifa be the party that splits on the Democratic side and begins the apocalypse? I wouldn't be shown it unless there's a reason for it. I don't know whether they're going to call it the Antifa party, but after the election in 2020, the Democrats are going to get destroyed because God will not let them take over yet. They're going to be humiliated come this election. Donald Trump is going to take the whole country, other than the very liberal cities. They already know this. That's why they're doing anything they can to try to make it better. Donald Trump is going to take everything. And what are you going to get from this? You're going to have the Democratic Party that is going to implode. You're going to have the Republican Party of those people who are Republicans in name only, the rhinos as they call them. They're not really Republicans. They agree more with the Democrats. You're going to have them break away. And you're going to form this extreme party, as the world would call them. But the world will call them great, and they will love them, because they're going to go fight against Donald Trump, and they're going to fight against all the policy that he's putting out for the next 4 years. So the world is going to love them. So you're going to have this party that should never have come into power. If this party that should not even be in power, but come into power and suddenly have the majority of what the Democrats used to be, because like I said, there's going to be the Republicans coming over to this side as well who hate Donald Trump. And understand that they made Trump the Messiah of the world. People say, well, you're on his side, you worship him, he's your Messiah, blah, blah, blah. You hear these comments all the time. Has nothing to do with that. By his works, he has come in and done what was necessary to keep the country together without it completely imploding. There could have been wars with North Korea, there could have been wars with Russia, there could have been civil war already within the country. There could have been all of these things happen right now in this 4-year term, but instead, he's done well for jobs. He's opened up businesses. He has fixed the Veterans Administration. He has done all of these things by his works, regardless of if you don't like him as a person or not. By his works we judge. We don't judge by anything else. By his works, he is one that stood alone and amongst of the whole entire world that hated him and tried his best to do what was right for the country. So, by their works you judge. And I see a lot of people now, they'll say, well, he's just a minion of Satan, or he is the Antichrist, or I don't even know. There's so many things that people call Donald Trump. But they never actually look at what he's done for the country. They only listen to what people say about him, and then they don't know themselves, so then they form an opinion about him based off of what people say. Everybody under the heavens from above is a puppet of God. Every single person. So if God is making him dance like a puppeteer, then God's making him dance. Likewise, he'll do the same for you and me. Likewise, he'll do the same for Satan. So you got to understand, and this is what people don't understand, is that all authority under the heavens are given to Jesus Christ. All authority. Not some authority, not, most authority, but he still doesn't have that one. He has all authority to do anything under the heavens to fulfill his word. Everybody is a puppet. If you think the New World Order or something that I hear all of these people talking about, that Donald Trump is for, if you think that a Zionist, if you think these people have more power than God, you should look into the mirror and check, do I really believe in God if I'm giving them power over him? And then you'll understand that you didn't really believe in God. Repent and be baptized in the name of the Holy Spirit. See your mistake and turn from it. Because if you think that anybody has power in this world other than God, you do not believe in Jesus Christ. You may say you believe in Jesus Christ, but unless you believe he has all authority in your heart, you don't truly believe him. So I know that Jesus Christ has all authority in the world to do whatever he desires. And what does he give us? What does he say he gives us? He gives us whatever we desire in our hearts. So likewise, you wonder why all this wickedness and this evil is coming into play? Because people have grown wicked and evil. The love of most has grown cold. He's not punishing us. He's giving us what we wanted. And there's a difference there that not many people will actually understand of God. He gives everybody what they want in a way that he can make everybody satisfied with it. So the more something divides and becomes stronger on one side or the other, the easier it is for the Lord to fulfill the scripture, because once you have such division, it's either right or left come the end. And we know who he chooses. And also just this antifa group, antifa. So it's like anti-Christ. All of these little things that God puts out as hints, saying to look at something. This is going to be a big part of what happens, I believe, after this election. That split in the party, and the control is going to be handed to what we call now the radical people on the left. The Democrats who were kind of in the middle, or just really going by what they knew from 1961, those kind of Democrats, a lot of them will run over to the Republican side after this election, because the Democrats are going to crush their own people in order to get that 20-30% who will stay loyal to them down to every last word. And that's what's going to happen. They're going to make sure that their socialist fascist party, their Antifa party, they're going to make sure everybody in it is loyal, so that whenever they get and gather their power, just like the Nazis did, They will not have people turn against them from within, just like the Nazis did. Later, we know people try to turn against them, but by then it was already too late. And that's what they're looking to do in the same exact manner. So what is fascism? It's a form of far-right authoritarian ultranationalism characterized by dictatorial power, forcible suppression of opposition, as well as a regimentation of society and economy, which came to prominence in the early 20th century. So what do they teach in the schools now? The same thing that they teach in the universities. They're telling young children who's bad, who's good. Donald Trump is evil. Everybody against him is good. They're indoctrinating people to believe there's white privilege and all of this other things that they've come up with. They're indoctrinating people to believe that abortion's fine because it's not really a baby. This was all taught in science class. The regiment that the children in Nazi Germany went through is the same regiment that is happening now, except here we don't even realize it yet. So we have the suppression of opposition. Have you seen how many conservative speakers have tried to go to a college and then they just wouldn't let them go, or they block them off from speaking, or somebody stands up and does speak and gets knocked in the face? That is what they do. They suppress the opposition. Why? Because if somebody is allowed to hear the opposition, people will agree with it. They can't let you speak because people will agree with you if you do speak. All of these things that a fascist does, dictatorial power, that is what they do. So they fight against Donald Trump, but what they're really saying is that they fight against all of those who are like him. So everybody that desires good for their country, everybody that desires justice, they fight against all of them as well. So we see their fascism. And look at the cities burning. For 100 days of protests, they're calling them in Portland. They're riots. They're not protests. They are sedition. They're an attempt to overthrow a United States government. That's what's happened in Portland. They even had their own city. This is not protest, but look what the anti-fascists do, along with the power of the Democrats. Because you know what? The Democrats need Antifa to get elected, don't they? Because they know in these cities they don't have enough power by themselves. Most of the city does go towards Antifa. Why do the Democrats allow their own city to be burnt? Because to them, power is greater than anything else. So they are going to allow Antifa and these other organizations, Black Lives Matter, it's all the same thing. They're going to allow them to destroy even the city that they represent, but they're going to twist it and blame it on Donald Trump, which is exactly what they do every single day. These people, like the Nancy Pelosi salon incident where she's caught in the salon without a mask on, you know what she did? She didn't even admit to the guilt. She said, they set me up. So if you're a bank robber and you have a guy driving the getaway car outside and you go in and you rob your bank, go out to that getaway car and drive away, and let's say a week later that driver turns himself in and he gives you over, well, is your excuse going to be, he set me up? No, you're still going to go to jail because you robbed a bank. And that's the same thing that Nancy Pelosi has done. She's twisted it to she was set up, and then right back to everything is Trump's fault. Because they cannot take personal accountability for anything. And not only can they not take personal accountability for anything, they won't even admit to any kind of wrongdoing. Exactly like Pelosi did. So all of these things that you see happening in the country, it's all because of the violent fascism movement which is happening in America. This Antifa movement. It's been all over the world, but it is a pro-fascist movement because they want ultimate power and authority over everyone. Facebook restricts free speech by popular demand. Facebook and all of these, Twitter and all of these social media networks, they are likened to the image of the beast because they will determine the propaganda. They will determine what is true. And if you don't agree with them, you won't be allowed to speak. Eventually, you won't be able to buy and sell either. All of the social media giants, they are also in the same place that this Antifa wing this new party that's going to come, they're going to be right with them, and they need them to be right with them, because this is the only way they can brainwash people, because these big social media giants, they can stop free speech, and they can change the history. And people will keep going back to use them because they are addicted to them like drugs. This is going to be the most important piece of this new party that's going to form. It's going to take everything that was once and change it. Remember, in the end times, the laws are changed. Things change. And here's where it comes from. And how can they change? Because the truth is unable to get out. People will look far and wide to find the truth, which is the Word of God, and yet they will not find it. All of these scriptures will be fulfilled in the same way. So you look at this, Trump just did a thing where he did away with the white privilege training, or I forget what the actual name of it's called, but essentially in public or in government institutions, they had to teach that the country was racist from inception just because white people owned slaves and took this country from Native Americans. They teach, literally, that America has been wicked and evil from the start, and they blame their ancestors for doing all of these things that they now have to suffer through. That was actually taught in government institutions, essentially that doctrine, and Trump just did away with it. So if you believe Trump is evil and wicked and not doing what is right, why don't you look at what he does and then determine whether what he does is right or not? You'll get your answers as to why you hate him. It's not that you hate him, it's that you've never actually looked. You've just believed everybody else who speaks nonsense about him because he is their Messiah. He's not my Messiah. He shouldn't be your Messiah. But what he is somebody that is in the image of God, a man trying to do the right thing for his people. So the world condemns and hates him. That's how you know he's not the Antichrist, because the whole world hates him. The whole world is going to love the Antichrist. Just another picture of this squad here. You can see them. The pale horse in the middle extending her hands. She's very pale. Remember when she wore that white dress to the speech? You have the one with the white cap beside her. You have the red horse right there. And you have the black horse down on the end. It is unmistakable how they dress even, that you can see which horseman is which horseman by what they're going to represent in the apocalypse. Each of them will represent this piece of America, this horse that comes to destroy the world. Each one of them will represent that piece. And they're all young too, so there's plenty of time to get it done. There's plenty of time in this generation to raise them up to be like that. And then also, you talk about the red, the white, the pale, and the black. Take a look at antifa signs. Well, they're red, they're white, they're black. But what are they missing? What is the one thing they're missing? What is the one thing they're missing right now? And it's the one who Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez fulfills whenever you look at those pictures I showed you. It's the pale horse that's not yet here. You know why that pale horse isn't here yet in these Antifa signs? Because that smooth-tongued devil leader, just like Adolf Hitler was raised up, has not yet been born yet. Whoever that leader is that comes, it may be Ocasio-Cortez, I don't know. Whoever that leader is that comes to take charge of this political party that's going to come after this election, that will be your representation of the pale horse. Take a look at all of these things that God shows you with your eyes even in this world and put it into a spiritual understanding. Things are done in this world for a reason so that people who have the eyes to see can see and see it. So what I believe is going to happen in this election, Donald Trump is going to win it in an absolute landslide, even if they can cheat. But all of the plans that come against him have not worked. And why have they not worked? Because clearly God has given him authority. If all of these plans would come out against him for anybody else, they would have been destroyed. Why? Because God did not give them the protection. He has given it to Donald Trump. He has given him the authority to do these things because it is the will of the people in this country who are righteous. They want America to be the same as it was, or at least change back to what America was, a conservative country with Christians and people who would do things for everybody else. That's what the righteous want. They want equality and they want goodness. And because God raised up this man we know as Donald Trump in order to bring this back to the nation, to give people hope, to give God's people hope, if you go against that, or you hate that, or you don't, you just, something in you just seems like it's all off. He knows this, he does that, he's a Zionist, he's this, he's that, he's wicked, look how he speaks, all these things. Don't look at any of that. Look just about the policy that he has brought about. When you look just at the works, which from a politician is their policy, understand that the policy that he has instituted has been in line with God. And if you're against him for some other reason, or you think he has plots or whatever, did Jesus treat Judas any different until Judas turned? Of course not. Because until Judas turned, he was still a disciple. And that's something I myself have had to walk over the last 4 years to understand. If you do that, if you judge Donald Trump based upon what you think he's going to do, and you base all of what you think he's going to do off of what you hear now, you have condemned an innocent man before being proved guilty, the same as all these antifa rioters do. You do the same thing as them. Until Donald Trump turns with his policy, I know that he and his policy come for the hope of the people of God. Until he turns, or if he turns, that's the only time you will see me change what I believe of him. Because until he has a Judas moment, he is nothing but Donald Trump, a man who has given God's people hope in this country and in this world. Until he turns, or if he turns, do not judge a man until you see it by his works. And that is what myself did not do. That is what I think this whole generation of people have not done with Donald Trump. They have condemned him before he has done anything to be guilty. And it's God waking people up actually from what they do. God has not condemned us for this. He wanted us to see it. He wanted us through Judas to see that until a man turns, you cannot condemn him. Until that man is proven guilty by his works, you cannot condemn him righteously. Did Jesus, we go back to Judas. Judas received his reward of the shekels. He did the works. He let them know where the Messiah was, and he got paid for it. At that point in time, Judas turned in the Savior of the whole world in order to be put to death. Of course, that's God's plans all along. He understood what he was doing. But Judas still did it. So by his works, he stood condemned, didn't he? And that's why he went and took his life. He stood condemned already by his works. If you can give me, 10 examples, I don't even know. If you give me and you say, hey, look, this is the policy that Donald Trump has put out, and it's wrong because it's against God. You give me that policy, write it in the comments if you want. And I will show you that every single one of these policies are not against God. They're against the world. The reason he hasn't passed some of these ones, because the world fights him tooth and nail for it. And God continues to string the world along to keep it upright long enough so that every single one of his own lost sheep can see the truth and come back to it. He's not prolonging the world for the sake of the world. He's prolonging the world for the sake of his people who have not yet recognized who they are. And it's very important for us who teach these kind of things to understand this and to teach it. You cannot call yourself a Christian and walk with God. God must call you a Christian, and then you follow him. There's a big difference in this world of religion. Doesn't understand it. They don't accept it. They don't see it because they do not believe in his authority. Just like they don't believe that Donald Trump is put here, raised by God and authority to do what he has done, to throw truth down. Without Donald Trump, we would have gotten none of this truth that we've known since 2016. None of these failures of the Democratic Party would have ever been able to come out. None of these failures of the Republican Party would have ever come out. John McCain would have still been a war hero. But because Donald Trump came into power by the authority of God, and God gave him authority to do what was needed for the country, now we can see all of this truth. And why? Because God threw the truth down to us by raising up somebody who spoke it against the entire world who would not stand firm on it. Trump has been the only one who has stood firm on what he has believed and said. Only one. You have all of us who stand firm, but we're trampled underfoot. All we are is slaves right now. We can just speak, because God gives us the authority to speak it to the world. That's why I speak through YouTube. But we have no power. Everybody just looks at us as nothing, as crazy. God put Donald Trump into power to have that authority in order to keep the world glued together just long enough so that everyone will recognize whether they're on the right or on the left. And I'm not talking about political parties anymore here. I'm talking about you either are going to do the right thing and stand with God, or you're not, the right or the left. And this Antifa, this organization, all it needs is their leader. And that leader of this organization, that's going to be your Antichrist. Because that is the one who will eventually come into power in this country and over the world. That one will be the ruler of it. That one, who is now an anti-fascist, will then be the Antichrist. He has to have political power. He has to have religious power. He has to have both. Or she, or it, has to have both powers. Antifa is a religious organization as much as it is a political organization, because it believes what it says about the world is gospel. This is the only one that fits the bill in this time period. It hasn't yet come yet. So when you see all these things happen, do not be surprised about it. Remember that you heard it from some crazy guy speaking on YouTube. This is what is coming to take over this country. And just like that 30% the Nazis came into power and then took it and kept it because they changed the policies so that they could remain in power, just like they did it, so will this organization that comes from Antifa do it. Pay very close attention to what happens in the states after this election, because this will tell us much of what is coming over the next few years. And how long we remain here, I do not know. I've said this. There's a pause after every bit of deliverance. It could come right at March 6th. It could come on March 27th, 2021. It could come on April of 2040. There was a pause between, and then there was a war in the heavens. It doesn't say immediately there was a war in the heavens in Revelation 12, does it? It says, and then there was a war in the heavens. I don't know. All I know is that God does not tarry. He's not tarrying now either. He is waiting for his people to come back to him. There's no tarry in that. But how long the world actually has till the people of God part the sea and walk across it into New Jerusalem, I do not know. But I know these things that he is showing me of Antifa and of the world. I wouldn't see these things that I am unless it was imminently coming with the action. And it's going to come. When you see it happen, remember you heard it, and then you will know that what I have spoke was the truth. God bless.